Today we're talking with Luke Hohmann. He is the founder and CEO of FirstRoot, which is a business that provides a participatory budgeting platform. And that's something we'll be getting into what that is in a few minutes. But first, Luke, I just want to thank you for doing this. Thank you for participating with my class. It's the class every semester we pair a team of students with a practicing entrepreneur such as yourself, and that's what really makes the class go. So I really appreciate you doing this with us. So let's just start out by where are you today?
Hi, David, and hi, class. I am in Sunnyvale, California, and true to form, the sun is shining.
We're jealous.
Well, we're jealous of the rain that you get. If we could trade a little sun for rain, that'd be an easy trade to make.
Well, not only do we get a lot of rain, we have 20% of the world's fresh water. So I think you guys are going to be coming after us pretty soon.
Yeah, well, there are predictions of water being the new oil.
So let's start out. I just want to get some personal history on you. Tell us about yourself for a couple minutes.
Sure. I moved to the Detroit area I spent 0 to 20 outside of Buffalo. I moved to the Detroit area when I was 20 years old. I didn't move to go to Michigan. I moved to figure skate. As we all know, or as people may know, the Detroit metropolitan area is one of the United States powerhouses of pairs and figure skating. Lots of champions have come from there. And I came to skate at the Detroit Skating Club. I started working part-time for electronic data systems at General Motors' Warren facility, then at the Auburn Hills facility. And in that process, I built expert systems with some researchers at GM Research. And I became really desirous of getting my degree. And it came to pass that EDS supported me in getting a degree at University of Michigan. And I joined the University of Michigan in 1988. And I met Elliot Soloway, where some of the students may or may not know Elliot, a very dynamic, brilliant individual. And I worked in the University of Michigan AI lab for my bachelor's and master's degree and had a fantastic time. Really enjoyed that process. When I left Michigan, I worked for electronic data systems for a few more years. And then I kind of got bit by working in a smaller company. And I think many people have a path to entrepreneurship. Sometimes people start that way. Sometimes people have a path. And my path was spending 10 years at a really big company, even working my way up to being vice president of a subsidiary of EDS. And that's when I started to realize, hey, wait a minute, working in a smaller organization can be a lot of fun. I moved from EDS to my first startup where I was the 10th employee, which was a training and consulting firm. Then I moved to Silicon Valley in 1996 to join another startup that did patent portfolio management. Again, I came in as head of engineering. I added product management skills. So eventually I became the VP of engineering and product management. Okay. And so I wanted to work in smaller systems. And that's when I went to a company called Object Space, which was doing object-oriented programming and training and system design. And then from there, I continued my progression to becoming an entrepreneur.
Okay. And so after that, you moved to Silicon Valley.
I did.
And so that Object Space, where was that company?
That was in Dallas, Texas. So
okay.
I went from the Detroit area to Dallas, Texas. And this was because I was still working for EDS. And one of the phrases I like to use with younger people is, if you want to be a tiger, you got to go to the tiger den.
Going from EDS to Object Space and then to Silicon Valley.
That's right. And it was the heyday of the start of the internet boom in the first internet cycle. And it was 1996, and you could just see this internet thing coming. And again, I wanted to go where the action was. So where was the action? Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to join a company that seemed flaky to me. And I don't know the consumer space particularly well. I'm a business guy. So I joined a company called Origin Systems, and we created the world's first data warehouse for patent portfolio data. It was a big data warehouse at the time. It was 5 terabytes. Nowadays, that's nothing. But back in 1997, building a 5 terabyte data warehouse on Windows 3.1 and SQL Server 7 was really quite an engineering accomplishment. And we sold our patent data warehouse to businesses that needed to manage patent portfolios or do patent licensing or intellectual property management. And that's when that kind of started to become aligned. So I started consulting, and I did nothing more, David, than send out an email to about 40 friends of mine. And I said, hey, I'm starting a new consulting business. Who wants to hire me? And one thing led to another. And through that consulting business, and that was way back in 2003, but through that consulting business, what I discovered was that the annual budgeting process in large organizations was really, really broken. Large organizations treat their annual budgets as kind of Hunger Games. It's not collaborative. It's not supportive. It's not beneficial. So I started creating solutions to create better ways to collaboratively make decisions on resources. Along the way of building that company, I started doing participatory budgeting philanthropically. I started helping cities and schools use these same techniques I was pioneering in business to make decisions. And I kind of got hooked on the schools. So to close the story and explain where we are right now is I ended up having a fantastic offer for selling the company that I had created to a partner who I was deeply aligned with. So I sold my last company, Contenio, that did participatory budgeting for enterprises, to Skilled Agile, which is the creators of the Skilled Agile framework. And that is the framework used by large organizations who are doing agile software development. It's the most widely used framework for software development around the world. And it was just a great fit. I completed my integration tasks, and then I started FirstRoot last year. Of course, it's starting a company in the middle of the pandemic sounds like starting another company that I did in 2000, but it's okay. We're doing well. And I'm bringing participatory budgeting solutions to schools to teach financial literacy and promote positive civic engagement. And we can dig into that a little bit. And that's, I think, the alignment with the interest of the class.
So who is the customer set that this solution is aimed at?
The customer solution set, if you talk to an entrepreneur, I'm going to create the largest possible target market. So for me, it's quite literally every school around the world I would like to see doing participatory budgeting. It's a process that's endorsed by the United Nations. It's actually used outside of the US more than in the US. So it's one of those innovations that came from Latin America that's kind of coming into the US. But practically speaking, the users are the students and teachers. The stakeholders are the communities that benefit from greater participation. The buyers are principals and school districts who actually write checks to bring our platform and our curriculum into their schools and into their school districts.
So is this something that those principals and superintendents, school leaders, is this something that they know they need right now? In other words, what pain are they feeling that this solution is addressing?
That's a compelling question, because I think you're alluding to the phrase that VCs often use, which is give me aspirin, not vitamins, right? You want to know there's real pain, and so that people have a buying process. This is the challenge that I face personally, being an entrepreneur who can kind of peek into the future. When I did my last company, no one said there was actual pain about the participant or about the annual budgeting process in big companies. They would complain about it, but it was kind of this diffuse pain. And one of the things that entrepreneurs need to look at is a concept of direct and referred pain. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor and you say, doctor, my back is really bothering me lately. What's going on? And your doctor says, well, actually, your calf muscles are too tight and you've been walking a little weird. And that's been putting a strain on your hamstrings, which now puts a strain on your back. So the way to fix the problem is we need to get you to stretch your calf muscles. And you're thinking, you got to be kidding me. It's my calf. Mm-hmm. And the doctor's like, yeah, it's not your back. It's your calf. You're feeling the pain in your back.
Yeah.
So let's look at what the pain that we're solving is. Society in America is facing two really fundamental pains. One of them is the very persistent racial wealth gap between white people and people of color. We know the data is very clear that it's at least 10 times the average wealth of a family of color versus a white family. Some studies say it's as high as 17 times the racial wealth gap. And you might think, well, that's okay. If I'm wealthy, I don't really care. It's a poor person's problem. But if you dig into the data, you'll find that the greater the economic inequality in a society, the worse that society performs on health and social factors. So what happens is more unequal societies have higher rates of obesity, lower rates of trust, higher addictions in opiate and alcoholism, higher incarceration rates. And that's not in the US, that's like in UK and Australia and other places. So what's happening is this creates an economic drag on the society. Fixing this drag creates economic opportunity for everyone. A recent report from McKinsey says that if we can close the racial wealth gap, we can generate somewhere between $2.5 to $4 trillion in economic growth and greater GDP in the United States. So you go to any CEO of any company and ask them, would you like to see an extra 4 to 6% GDP growth? Chances are they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
So one structural pain is the racial wealth gap, and how do we fix it? And we fix that partly by education. We know that when we educate people on proper financial habits, they develop those financial habits.
Yeah. So let's get back to the pain. No, let's keep focusing on that pain.
Yeah. So now there's this pain, right? The second pain is the pain of polarization in our society regarding our politics. We are seeing an increasing polarization in our politics. We're seeing politics that doesn't work. We no longer trust the federal government in some cases for good reasons. They don't get stuff done.
Yeah.
And so now, David, the research from Tufts University says that 24% of millennials think that democracy is a bad way to run the country. Mm-hmm. This is frightening. 1 in 4 millennials are feeling that they shouldn't be engaged. Yeah. So the pain that we're seeing is twofold. One is a lack of economic opportunity, and two, politicians who need votes are not, in a sense, getting them, and therefore they're not getting the mandates that they need to enact the programs and policies they want.
Yeah.
So what's happening is schools are turning to participatory budgeting. And I'm going to circle back to your actual question. You asked something along the lines of, like, effectively, who needs participatory budgeting and who knows they need it?
Well, no, actually, and I didn't want to just interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah, please.
I'm trying to put myself in the seat of that administrator, right? And granted, there are these. We see this over and over again. There are these societal problems that are really, huge, right? And societal pains that are huge. But now I'm sitting in the seat at the school, and I got to feel some pain, right? Because I can spend some money on refurbishing the soccer field, or I can spend some money on this FirstRoot participatory budgeting platform. So
Exactly.
what pain am I feeling that's going to make me, make that choice for FirstRoot?
That's right. And I love the way you're honing in on that. And it's helpful for me because I can kind of get wrapped up in my social mission a little bit sometimes. But let's talk about the actual pain. There's the reason I brought up financial literacy and civics is because the pain that you feel as a principal is based on the state that you're in. If you're in Wisconsin or Texas, your state has mandated personal finance literacy education requirements, the curriculum. So that filters into the school district and that filters into the principal saying, I have a mandate to teach personal finance, just like I have a mandate to teach Common Core, and I have a mandate to teach physics and AP US history, right?
Okay.
So the pain is I have to teach personal finance. Now, in that regard, FirstRoot competes with other vendors who offer personal financial education programs. Those break down into banks, which are just really often thinly veiled account acquisition strategies. Banks are horrible at teaching finance because banks don't want you to be financially literate. This is the secret. Banks make more money. Banks have, what's interesting about the bank revenue curve is it's a U. Banks market that they want you to be financially literate because they make a ton of money on high net worth individuals and services for high net worth individuals. What they never market is they make more per profit on a person by targeting fees for low income and minority customers. Definitely. So what happens is banks make, and in fact, to put a number behind that, banks make more than $100 billion in fees charged to low and moderate income consumers through things like fees, credit card interests, overdraft fees on checking accounts, right? And so what they do is they go into the schools to create accounts through thinly veiled personal finance training programs that are really not very aligned with the needs of the community. So we fight on one front, depending on the state, we choose that battle. The other battle that we choose, so again, going to the pain, I'm a school administrator. I have the pain of meeting a personal financial literacy education requirement. I'd like a program that supports the community and supports my values of education. And we provide a fantastic alternative in that regard. The second pain is in civics. If you're in New York State or if you're in the Chicago public school system, they have actually adopted civics education programs based on participatory budgeting. For example, New York City is one of the nation's largest, if not the nation's largest school district, 1.1 million students, 1,800 schools. It's enormous. Their civics for all education curriculum is based on participatory budgeting. The 130-page curriculum, you can go on the web and see it in action. So now those schools have to put in place a participatory budgeting program. And here's the issue. It's expensive and hard to do it in person. We should explain briefly in the few minutes that we have left exactly what it is. Participatory budgeting doesn't mean walking up to the kids and saying, hey, here's $1,000, figure it out. That's not educational. Participatory budgeting is a structured 5-phase program. Phase 1, the students define a theme like school safety or school environment or athletics. Phase 2, the students create ideas pursuant to the theme, raw ideas, proposals. We need more gym equipment. Well, David, you and I can't do anything with that. So in phase 3, the students refine the ideas to specific proposals. It's not that we need new gym equipment, is that we need new basketball nets, new soccer nets, and new baseball bats. For the band, we need new drums and a new guitar. And it's going to cost this much money, and it's going to be sourced from this location, and this person in the school is going to help us buy it and implement it. The proposals that meet the school guidelines, because schools do have guidelines about what you can, like, for example, the students can't change the time for lunch. That's a policy change. The proposals that meet the guidelines and are within the budget go into a voting ballot. And now we get to reinforce that civics component. Voting systems, voting algorithms. How do you create voting algorithms that have equity and inclusion in the algorithm itself? If you're an engineer and you're listening, algorithms are opinionated. So are you creating an algorithm that is supporting the needs of the community? And my favorite phase is after the voting, the students' ideas are implemented. And implementation is my favorite phase because it creates metacognitive reflective learning. Did the proposal that we voted on have the desired impact in our school? Did it make it better? Did it make it safer? Were the soccer nets the right nets? Did it get what we need? And that process covers design thinking. It covers civic engagement. It covers financial literacy. So there's a lot there in the participatory budgeting process and program.
So the FirstRoot is a platform, as I understand it, a software platform, an application that makes it easy for these institutions to execute this kind of a program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the way we've positioned and designed our platform is for the school districts around the world that have curriculum, like the New York City Civics for All curriculum, or the Chicago Public Schools curriculum. There's a curriculum in Scotland because they have a huge commitment to participatory budgeting. The Scottish national government allocates 1% of the national government to participatory budgeting. Our platform can be used with these curriculums because our platform has no expectations of the particular curriculum. However, for school districts that want financial literacy, that want civics, those school districts can adopt our curriculum and our platform. And we're working with a couple of school districts in different states that don't have a financial literacy mandate. For example, California, where I live, it's not like Wisconsin and Texas. So some of the school districts there are seeking both. They recognize the desire to improve financial literacy, and they need a curriculum. So we sell to them both a curriculum and the platform.
All right. So I'm going to go from the imaginative to the mundane. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm the superintendent of this school district. You've convinced me. I want this thing. How do I buy it? How do I actually, this just the mechanics? How do you buy it? How do you get it?
If we're flying under, this is an important thing for the entrepreneurs to know, is that one of the important differences between a business market and a consumer market is that in a consumer market, the consumer makes the decision, maybe in collaboration with their spouse, but they're the sole decision makers. So if you wanted to get a new car, you'd probably talk it over with your spouse and you'd go get a new car, but you don't go to anyone else. The way businesses work, and in this context, you should consider the school a business. The principal has a certain level of purchasing authority that they completely own on their own. So if our platform computes to a price point that the school principal can buy on their discretionary funds, they just buy it. If the school district wants to get involved because it's a massive school district, then we would enter into a negotiation, and based on our standard fees and based on the degree of services that the school district would require or desire, we negotiate a price. And that there's no published price point for those kinds of negotiations at this point. We're too young of a company to have, I'd say, have the grooves in the road, but it's somewhere between $1 and $10 a student. In school tech, you can, if you're the principal, You can go to our website, buy the app, right? Buy it for your school if it's below your price point. Take a credit card swipe and run it through your discretionary funds. If you're a teacher, you can, again, buy it for $1 a kid for your classroom. And, let's say your classroom is 30 kids. For $30, you can try out our app in your classroom. As part of our social mission, we are a benefit corporation. I said that earlier. We make our platform free for families because we know that if you're a low and moderate income student and you're being taught financial literacy, you want to be able to bring it into your family environment and bring those principles to your family. So our platform is free for families. And we define a family as up to 8 people on a single use or a single license. And again, a family member could go get the app, download it on their phone, go to a website, and use it with their family to be successful. Mm-hmm. You want to be careful as an entrepreneur you don't want to get too fancy in your revenue. You want your revenue model to be simple. And you know that you've been a successful entrepreneur. So school administrators are used to buying things on a per student fee. Mm-hmm. That's how they buy other software. So yeah. we're trying to match their mental model of how much am I spending on a per student basis. Mm-hmm.
So this FirstRoot platform, this is a big undertaking, it seems, and so I'm just wondering, in terms of clearly there's a big software development effort that has to take place with this, but what are the the big activities that you have to engage in to deliver on this thing? I assume you got software development, you got marketing, so forth, but how would you?
I would say that every organization, regardless of size, has the same existential structure that you just talked about. There's some aspect of product development, and there's some marketing, there's some sales, there's some finance. When you're small, you do it all, right? So what you do is you tend to find founders and co-founders who are multifaceted in their experience. And then as the organization grows, it's like a cell splitting, because the small cell of the first organization splits as it grows. So we're not small, we're tiny. We're a whopping 11 people right now. But we have developers, we have some sales and marketing, we have partner development, we have bloggers, we have website designers. Some of it's full-time, some of it's bolted in part-time, but yeah, all of that must exist. I personally don't think engineering will be our biggest expense. I think it'll be an expense. I don't think it'll be our biggest one over time, because first, we're not inventing a new process. We're automating a process that exists. Second, we're building in a SaaS model that has a lot of support in Rails. We're building on AWS. When you're building on AWS, you have a lot of infrastructure that makes your ability to develop product cost effectively pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to minimize our marketing expense, because what we've also done with our application is we've spent a tremendous amount of time working with the kids to understand what their needs are and their desires. And what they've told us repeatedly is they want social media integrated into the app so they can share their ideas, share their proposals. So what we're starting to see, which is really exciting, is we're starting to see TikTok videos about our app. Mm-hmm. That's the marketing that works. And then the last thing, of course, we'll need is salespeople and sales organizations and things like that.
So what do you have to be really good at to make this work?
Usability. It has to be easy to use.
Your core expertise is
UI. UI. It's what I call everything has to be hit the easy button. And by usability, I mean inclusionary usability. We work really hard on our DEAI. So our platform is already localized in multiple languages. Our platform supports, we've built it according to WC3 accessibility guidelines, we really want to make sure that our platform is fundamentally available to the needs of the communities we serve.
Okay. So why are you the right entity to do this? What special skills or resources or, do you have available that make you the entity that's going to be successful in this area?
Yeah, I'm going to start by the obvious. I've got 10 years of experience implementing participatory budgeting in the private sector, where in my last company, my platform was used to manage $3 billion in portfolio investments. In the public sector, I've got a proven track record of philanthropic contributions to communities around the world. I've implemented and I didn't say this yet to you, but I'm going to shock even someone like you, who I know is a global business person. I've got 3 million miles on American Airlines. Whew. David, I have done participatory budgeting in the public and private sector in Lublin, Poland, Edinburgh, Scotland, Bogota, Colombia, Tel Aviv, Gibraltar, Australia, Auckland, New Zealand, you name the place in the world, and I'll tell you how I did PB there. So there's very few people, and I think entrepreneurs underestimate this. If you want to win in a domain, you got to know that domain. You got to be like literally, sometimes you hear people say you don't want to be the smartest guy in the room or the smartest person in the room, the smartest woman in the room. I sometimes reject that. I'm like, yeah, you want to be the smartest person in the room. And I want to have that confidence that says, hey, look, I really know participatory budgeting. I've been doing it for a decade. Yeah. I know how this works. I know how to build systems that work. I know the differences in the need between PB in schools, PB in communities, and PB in organizations, the different budgeting processes, the different budgeting structures. Like, we know this. We know how to do this.
So clearly then your expertise and your experience is a key resource for this company. And I would probably also throw in there your experience with software development to be able to manage all of this. But what other key resources would you say the company has right now?
Love. I'm serious. I tell my kids, those who marry for money earn it. And what I mean by that is, if you start a company and you think you're doing that company because you're going to make a ton of money, then okay, frankly, good luck, because it's too hard to do all of what we do for money. And you've been an entrepreneur, you know that to be true. If your sole purpose is to make money, you shouldn't go start a company, right? Go do other things. You
mentioned on a few occasions partnerships that FirstRoot is in. Who are those partners? What are those partnerships that help the business to go?
We're in discussions and with the 4-H Foundation, which is a fantastic, well-known organization. And we're also in discussions, and we've actually had a relationship with and have an active relationship with the Rotary International, where Rotary has a program called Rotary Interact, where they sponsor participatory budgeting in schools, and they've made a donation. So they actually, I should take a step back. Rotary Interact is designed to create positive civic engagement in schools using the values and principles of Rotary International. And they are sponsoring a participatory budgeting program here in Sunnyvale. And we hope to increase that with other Rotary schools. And then we're also reaching out to certain high net worth family offices who have interest in their communities, because people are starting to realize that economic disparity, again, is much more profoundly damaging to the fabric of our society than people realize. So to me, that's part of what's happening is part of our partners are family offices, values aligned and mission aligned organizations. And there's a lot of them in the US. I don't want to imply that there won't be more. I hope there's more. And by the way, figuring out how to actually have a thriving and successful partner program would be something that would be really great for our company, something that we really want to do.
Well, let's turn to the last couple of questions. That's a great segue. There is just one more business model thing and then a couple of more general questions. But what are the cost components for this company, the biggest cost components?
The biggest cost component is our software development activities. And as we scale, it's going to be software development and compliance and security. It's one thing to say that we're managing a $2,000 program for a single school. It's another thing to say that we're managing a $10,000 program for 500,000 schools and managing $500 million. So we're going to have significant investments in cybersecurity, cyber protection, proper financial and fiduciary controls, audits, proper membership into the financial institution and the rails and the payment systems. I know there's a lot of work right now on crypto. We're looking at certain forms of blockchain or other kinds of things to properly engage and lower our costs. But I think that compliance, being absolutely squeaky clean, to me, compliance is not something you get around, because if you try to get around compliance, you'll eventually create unethical choices no matter how you slice it. You have to use, in my opinion, compliance and regulatory requirements as the minimum bar, not the maximum bar. So in Europe, we have the GDPR for privacy and personal data. In the US, we have things like FERPA and COPA for children and families. And again, to me, those are not the minimum bar. I'm sorry, those aren't what I'm trying to get around. Those are the minimum bar. I want to have a brand that in 10 years from now, people say, "Oh, FirstRoot, I trust them. I know I can trust them with my children's education, with significant funds, with community-based initiatives that really make a difference." That's what we're after.
Okay. So just the last couple questions here. What do you view as the biggest challenges to your ability to move forward with this?
Probably the single biggest challenge would be in the near term. It's always capital for a small company that's growing. It's always capital generation. In the long run, I literally, maybe I'm just too biased and I'm too drinking my own Kool-Aid and I'm believing too much. The global trends are irrefutable. The United Nations promotes and supports participatory budgeting. You're seeing it being adopted in schools and cities and communities around the world. You're seeing it adopted in businesses. I did that work. You're seeing large school districts build curriculum around it. So for me, I think the near term is a little dicey. I think the long term is incredibly wonderful and brilliant and super exciting.
So there seem to be some definitely exciting opportunities looking forward. What excites you most about where you are right now?
I think what excites me, that's a hard one to answer because I'm excited so easily about what I do. I think what excites me the most is what I learned when I was at Michigan, not in the engineering school, but in my work with Carl Weick over at the business school. And Carl Weick is one of the world's foremost organizational behaviorists. And he wrote an extremely influential paper in the early 70s called The Strategy of Small Wins. And I would invite every entrepreneur to read this paper. And what Carl says in the paper is, look, if you're trying to do something in the social sector, you're going to have a lot of people who are arrayed against you because systems get the way they are because they get the way they are. And eventually there's a group of people who are inevitably benefited by the structure of the current system. Certainly there are people harmed. That's why we want to change it. But it's undeniable that there are people that are benefited by that system. So if you want to make change, you can't take a frontal assault on the system because the system's going to reject the change. The way to do it, and what Carl advocates, is the strategy of small wins. Create small wins that are unnoticeable to the current system, but where each win is concrete and builds momentum. And then by the time the system realizes what's happening, the change is so far along that it can't be stopped. And we believe that participatory budgeting is that exact example. You didn't know anything about participatory budgeting until we started talking. And then you're like, wait a minute, you're telling me all of New York is being taught participatory budgeting? That's 1 million kids. Whoa. Okay, now there's 56 million kids in American schools. Okay, so it's not a small win, but it's a small win relative, 1/50th. And wait, Chicago's doing it. Wait, Phoenix Union High School is doing it. Wait, this school in Miami is doing it. And you start to realize like these little pops, these little small wins. And so I tell my investors, I tell our employees, our strategy is the strategy of small wins. We do not need to have every school in America using our platform tomorrow. We need one school at a time being successful, because that's going to be the small win that draws people in. So that's what's got me excited. It's just every single little win gets me excited.